Featuring a set symbol in the shape of the horns of the evil dragonic planeswalker Nicol Bolas, Hour of Devastation released from Magic the Gathering on July 14, 2018, and is the game's 75th expansion. The set and its story pick up where its predecessor, Amonkhet, leave off, with Bolas returning to the plane of Amonkhet, and the beginning of a hotly anticipated event known simply as The Hours kicks off. Now, without further ado, here's a story summary for you. The second sun of Amonkhet closes in on its rightful position in the sky. As the hour approaches, the populace of Naktamun gather near the Gate of the Afterlife, the great barrier along the Luxor River through which the bodies of those who are ceremoniously sacrificed at the end of the gods' trials are taken. During the first of the hours, the Hour of Revelation, it's prophesied that the gate will open and all will be revealed. Dejiru, still angry at his friend Samut for disallowing him to go through the ritual himself after his time in the trials, rushes to the gate, hoping to still prove his worth and take what he felt was his place in the afterlife. As was foretold, Naktamun's citizens watched in amazement as the gate slowly opened to reveal paradise. It was a paradise of nothing but wastes and decay, with a large necropolis in the distance. The citizens all murmured in confusion. The noise from the crowd, though, would not last long as an imposing winged creature flew through the gates and into the city. Many of the citizens began to cheer, assuming the creature to be their god pharaoh. The keen-eyed Samut recognized it for what it really was, a demon. From atop a nearby obelisk, the demon surveyed the crowd before swooping down towards the Luxa. Hovering above the water, the demon raked his claws across his own arm and allowed himself to bleed into the river as he muttered an incantation of sorts. As each drop of blood joined with the water, the Luxa's flow slowed and slowed until, finally, it ceased to move at all. Instead, it coalesced into a pool of pestilence as all life within and along the river faded. The deed done, the demon once more faced the crowd, this time bellowing a name: Liliana Vess. The demon Razaketh had arrived, and he was looking to collect on his portion of Liliana's demonic contract. And while Liliana tried to stay hidden and resist his beckoning, her body moved on its own and obeyed. The demon, enjoying a hold over the necromantic planeswalker none of the other demons did thus far, toyed with her, making her bark like a dog, and forcing her to nearly hit herself in the face as he humiliates her. Through this display, Liliana tells the demon that she is going to kill him, just as she had two of the other contract-holding demons. It's a threat that Razaketh all but ignores. What he couldn't ignore, though, was a torrent of flame striking him. Liliana's friends had come to her aid. Over and over again, Razaketh would dominate Liliana. Over and over again, one of the other members of the Gatewatch would interfere and break his concentration until, finally, Liliana was able to take matters into her own hands. Using her talent for necromancy, she raises all of the corpses of the various wildlife that lived in the now ruined Luxor River and sent them all at the demon. Razaketh attempted to escape, but it was to no avail. The zombified beasts tore at the demon's flesh, and large undead crocodiles devoured him until there was nothing left of note. The third of Liliana's demons had been defeated, but there was little time to celebrate as the next hour, the Hour of Glory, was already upon them. Upon Razaketh's death, the ruined Luxa's flow resumed, though in the opposite direction. Flowing backwards towards the necropolis, the building seemed to soak in every ounce of blood. In a flash, 3 immense sarcophagi that were built into the necropolis's very structure shatter. Amonkhet's 3 missing gods, the Locust God, the Scarab God, and the Scorpion God, had returned. While the Locust and Scarab gods stood vigilant at the necropolis, the Scorpion God was on the move and lumbered towards the gate to the afterlife. Amonkhet's other 5 gods were puzzled. Were these newcomers allies Is this a test? They soon would find out as, when Ronus went out to meet the approaching entity, it charged. The two locked in combat, and Ronus, Amonkhet's god of strength, found himself outmatched. After a change in tactics, though, things seemed to be going better. Ronus charged his staff with a venomous enchantment and began to wail on the scorpion god's carapace, cracking it and allowing the venom to seep inside. The scorpion god slowed, then fell. Ronus then turned away from his opponent to address his comrades in victory, but no words were ever spoken. The scorpion god had gotten back up and had run Ronus's skull through with his stinger. These newcomers, indeed, were no allies. Ronus's soon-to-be corpse now lying in a heap on the ground, the scorpion god begins to move on the remaining 4 of his comrades. As his last effort, the dying god of strength poured what he had left within him into his staff and hurled it towards his adversary, ensnaring him. Then, Ronus expired. As the second of the new gods, the Locust God, makes an advance on the gate, the Hour of Revelation begins. As he approached Noctamoon, the Locust God spread out his hands, unleashing a plague of locusts against the city. The insects ate away at the Hekma, Noctamoon's protective barrier, until it fell despite the god Kefnet's best efforts. Almost immediately, the city fell to chaos as hordes of zombies poured in from the sands outside the city's walls. Seeing the chaos, Dajiru and Samut feel they need to work together in order to protect Noctamoon's populace. Along with Hapatra, Ronus's head vizier, they seek out Oketra and Kefnet out by the gate, where the two are locked in combat with the Scorpion God. The trio try to convince the gods to flee to safety, but they relent, stating that the gods are there to protect the populace, rather than the other way around. The two gods fight in tandem, and, while most of their efforts seem to have no effect against their foe, Kefnet was able to draw the Scorpion God's attention just long enough to allow Oketra to fire a divine arrow directly into their enemy's head. It strikes true, and the Scorpion God's body crumbles to dust. Dajiru, Samut, and Hapatra celebrate their god's victory, but the celebration is brief as the dust that was the Scorpion God reformed itself. Kefnet didn't even have time to react, as immediately the Scorpion God lodged his stinger into his forehead, killing him. Oketra pleaded with the mortals to flee, but Hapatra refused. Instead, she and her basilisk charged the Scorpion God. As they were about to engage, Oketra came between them and the gigantic foe just as the Scorpion God was about to strike. A stinger protruded through Oketra's stomach as she was slain protecting her citizens. The Scorpion God then ventured further into the city, ignoring the mortals as he sought out the remaining gods. As he departs, some of the citizens of Noctamoon come out of hiding to pay their respects to their felled gods. Gideon, too, paid his respects. Hapatra then confronted Gideon and asked if the god Pharaoh was a visitor like he and his friends. Gideon confirmed as much. Hapatra responded that, in that case, he is their problem to deal with. In the meantime, Samut and Dajiru were seeking out Bantu and Hazaret, Amonkhet's remaining gods. Hazaret was easy to locate as she was defending the city from the invading horrors from Amonkhet's deserts. The pair tried to help protect her, but protection was something she did not ask for. Instead, she instructed them to gather as many people as they could and find a safe place out in the desert to hide until the god Pharaoh can arrive and make things right as she prayed for his quick arrival. A dark portal tore a hole in Amonkhet's sky. Nicol, the god Pharaoh, emerging from within. He viewed all of the destruction around him, then grinned. You see, Bolas had arrived on Amonkhet some 60 years prior, just as he was about to lose much of his power due to the effects of the Mending, the event on Dominaria that sealed the multiverse-threatening time rifts at the cost of changing the very nature of magic itself. Bolas had been searching for a way to prevent his power loss, or, at the very least, find a way to get it back at some point down the line. Amonkhet, he believed, will be key. The plane's 8 gods, however, immediately felt Bolas as a threat. In defense of their people, they rally against the Dragonic Planeswalker. In short, it was an effort that went poorly thanks to Bolas's reality-bending powers. Invading Noctamoon and landing on the tallest tower within the city, Bolas channeled a spell. In a blink, every living being on Amonkhet old enough to walk on their own simply vanished from existence. The gods crumbled to the ground as the cries of now familyless infants filled the air. Then, with a swipe of his claw, Bolas wiped the minds of the gods. Amonkhet was his. He manipulated the ley lines that ran through the plane, sealed away 3 of the plane's gods for safekeeping, and emptied the city's underground mausoleums so that the mummies can serve as caretakers for Amonkhet's orphaned population, as he rewrote the plane's history and theocracy so that the infants would be raised in a world designed by him as their god Pharaoh. And, to top it all off, he gave the world his promise to return, implanting that promise into the gods as prophecy that, as Amonkhet's second son takes his rightful place in the sky, he would return and claim his eternal right as God Pharaoh. The god Pharaoh now returned. Noctamoon's population's fears turned to cheers, then screams. Nicol Bolas arched his talons, and a torrent of hellfire rained down upon the city. As Hazard watched this display from her god Pharaoh, it finally dawned on her that all she believed was nothing but a lie. Her mind raced as she processed this conflict of emotions, until her attention was drawn to a nearby voice singing the god Pharaoh's praise. It was Bontu. Bontu, as it turned out, is the only of Amonkhet's gods who still had her original memories intact. Ambitious and craving power, she knew right away that Nicol Bolas could help her achieve her goals, and had made a deal with the Planeswalkers 6 decades ago to that end. And now that Bolas had returned, he issued her one final task: kill Hazoret. Without delay, the crocodile god sent a blast of dark energy at her god's sister. The spell ate away at Hazoret, addling her mind, but also unlocking her hidden memories. Crushed by the lies of Bolas and being deceived by her sister, Hazoret tried to fight back, but failed. Bontu trapped her god sister in a cocoon of hardened tar and brought her dying body to Bolas as if a prize. In thanks, the Dragonic Planeswalker informed Bontu that she is no longer useful to him, and promptly knocked her down with a bolt of dark energy. Enraged, the mortally wounded god of ambition tried to fight back, but she found herself unable to do so. Bolas laughed and flew away as a horde of zombies did her in. With her dying breath, she killed everything around her, disintegrating the tar cocoon around Hazoret, freeing her in the process. Hazoret, now the lone surviving god of Amonkhet. Bolas flew to the necropolis and to the Scarab God as the Hour of Eternity tolls. Prophecy states that it is during the Hour of Eternity that Amonkhet's faithful will take their eternal place by the god Pharaoh's side, and quite literally, that's what happened. As the Scarab God made its advance upon Noctamoon, it did so with legions of eternal warriors, zombie warriors made up of god Pharaoh faithful, all coated with a near-impervious blue mineral known as Lazotep. They were coming for the blood of Noctamoon, prepared to kill everybody they could find. Seeing only this incoming army, and seeing no other option, Samut finally decided to take Hazard's advice to flee. She led a group of survivors out into the desert and away from Noctamoon, and puts Hapatra in charge of finding them all a safe haven, while she and Dajiru returned to the city, along with a band of warriors, as they tried to protect their last remaining god. Fighting through wave after wave of Eternals, it became clear to Samut and Dajiru just how unstoppable a force these blue-coated zombies are. Among the Eternals was one of the most storied champions from Amonkhet's past, Neheb. The Minotaur zombie nearly killed the duo, and would have easily, were it not for the timely arrival of the Gatewatch, who assisted her in felling the undead Minotaur. Afterwards, the Gatewatch made the assumption that Bolas probably already knew that they were on the plane. They decided it was best to take the fight to him, on their terms, rather than eventually being ambushed by him during all the chaos. Samut offered to join, but Dajiru disallowed it, and reminded her of their duty to protect Hazret at all costs. The pair then set off in search of the God of Zeal, leaving the Gatewatch to their charge. On the way, Samut comes across Ronus' corpse. Seeing this only furthers her fortitude. She used this as a means to rally her comrades, enhancing their resolve. A moment later, a badly injured Hazret found them as she was being pursued by the Scorpion God. Despite her bad state, she still instructed the humans to leave for safety. Down an arm and in overall bad shape, Hazret tried her best to battle her adversary. Samut, seeking to assist, leaped high into the air and landed on the Scorpion God, digging her blades into his carapace. Seeing this, Noctamoon's other mortals joined the fight in support. After some effort, and good in the moment decision-making, the mortals began to push the Scorpion God back towards some broken obelisks, eventually causing him to trip and fall backwards, impaling the god on one of the broken monuments. As the Scorpion God struggled to free itself of its impalement, Hazard struck it deeply with her spear, burning him from the inside out, disintegrating the god once and for all. In the aftermath, Hazret was grateful to the mortals for their assistance, especially so to Samut for her efforts not just in the battle, but in all of her attempts previous in getting the god to see the truth. Samut was overjoyed by the god's praise and appreciation, so much so in fact that she felt something within her swell. Unbeknownst to all, Samut had the latent spark of a planeswalker within her, but it was latent no more. In a flash, she transcended and vanished from Amonkhet. She awoke on another plane, Theros. Knowing her work on her home plane was not yet complete, she willed her way back home, appearing a moment later before Hazret once more. The group, Hazret included, made their retreat into the desert to locate and join Hapatra and the other survivors, hopeful to see another day. Meanwhile, the Gatewatch sought out Nicol Bolas. The problem, though, is that Bolas was prepared for them, as the battle would take place in an hour not mentioned in the prophecy, the Hour of Devastation. Nicol Bolas, in true villain form, landed in the very same plaza in which the Gatewatch stood. Calling on the power of friendship and teamwork, Gideon instructed everybody to give it their all at once. He's convinced that a single, powerful, unified attack would probably be enough to fell the Dragonic Planeswalker if they acted fast enough. Gideon went in for an attack as Liliana, Chandra, and Nissa hurled spells at him, and Jace worked his mental magic on him. Bolas, however, was much more prepared and powerful than the group had anticipated. The Dragonic Planeswalker, to his own mirth, toyed with the Gatewatch members, as if humoring them for their attempts. The humor, however, only went so far. Bolas, just for a moment, let down his defenses enough to draw the Gatewatch in and provide them a false sense of hope. Using this opportunity, the Dragonic Planeswalker took them out one by one. Allowing Jace into his mind, Bolas took control of the connection and turned it against the Mind Mage, breaking his mind bit by bit in the process. Jace's mind then, as if acting in self-defense, caused the Mind Mage to planeswalk away to somewhere, anywhere but Amonkhet. As for Liliana, she knew the fight was futile. In fact, she would have left the battle already had it not been to save face with her Gatewatch friends. She still needed them as she hunted down her final contract-holding demon. The Chained Veil was calling for her to use its power against the Dragonic Planeswalker, but Bolas, perhaps feeling the Veil's pull as well, made her an offer. He told her that he could teach her how to properly wield the Veil so that she can use it safely without the usual drawbacks that she experienced, and to flee to somewhere safe so that he could find her later. Feigning defeat, Liliana expressed her intent to flee and recommended to Gideon, Nissa, and Chandra that they all do the same. It was advice that the trio chose not to take. Conflicted between staying to help her friends and listening to Bolas and taking his deal, the Necromancer saw little hope and even less in the way of options. In tears, she planeswalked away. The Gatewatch, now down to just 3, the tide of battle turns. Chandra, lost in rage, released torrents of flame on the Dragonic Planeswalker. It had little effect as he dove at her for an attack. Nissa jumped in to defend, but she was of no help. Bolas then picked up Chandra in his claw, the furious Pyromancer burning with rage. Bruised and tired, Chandra came to realize that if she stayed, she'd likely be killed. The Pyromancer Planeswalker planeswalked away to safety. Nissa was relieved that Chandra escaped, but now she questioned the Gatewatch, her role in it, and the group's goals overall. Her confidence in the group and the situation shaken, she found herself becoming consumed by dark tendrils from Amonkhet's ley lines. Were it not for Gideon's intervention, she would have been killed. In the brief moment she had, she planeswalked away, which left Gideon all alone against Bolas. The soldier felt hopeless. Still, he yelled at the Dragonic Planeswalker, stating that, in the end, he'd never win. Bolas chuckled. Then, with naught but a single talon pressed against the soldier, the Dragonic Planeswalker broke through his magical invulnerability shield, wounding him. It's almost like Bolas was giving Gideon the choice between fleeing and surviving, and staying, fighting, and dying. Part of Gideon wanted to stay despite how foolhardy such a notion would be at this point. He was tired, and there was part of him that just wanted to see it all end. He would not give up though. He would live to see tomorrow, and come back stronger and more prepared. He would live to fight another day. He escaped, planeswalking away. Bolas was satisfied. A few minutes afterwards, his agent, Tezzeret, showed up. While puzzled at the lack of dead Gatewatch bodies littering the ground, Bolas told him not to worry about it. Instead, he instructed the Artificer Planeswalker to travel to Ravnica and check on Ral Zarek, another of his pawns. Tezzeret departed as instructed, leaving Bolas alone with his army of nigh indestructible Eternals. Now needing only a few more pieces of his grand scheme to fall into place, Bolas roared in triumph. And that's where we'll leave the Gatewatch, well, what's left of it anyway, as well as the story of the Amonkhet block, though there's still more to say about Hour of Devastation as a set overall. Set design was led by Sean Main. Development was led by Dave Humphries. Considered a small set at 199 cards, plus an additional 10 cards that are exclusive to the set's 2 Planeswalker decks, Hour of Devastation was sold in traditional booster packs, a bundle, and the aforementioned Planeswalker decks, with those decks featuring the cards Nissa, Genesis Mage, and Nicol Bolas the Deceiver as face cards. In terms of mechanics and themes, -1/-1 counters, Aftermath, Cycling, and Exert all carry over from Amonkhet, as does the concept of brick counters, though this time you're taking brick counters off of cards rather than putting them on. New with Hour of Devastation are 2 more named mechanics. Afflict, which is a triggered ability that says whenever a creature with Afflict becomes blocked, the defending player loses life equal to the creature's Afflict value.
We want to create sort of this damned if you do, damned if you don't feel, which is how do you stop a zombie army, a mindless zombie army? It's kind of hard to stop them. And the idea is whether you block them or not block them, it doesn't matter. They're sort of kind of going to get you anyway. You don't block them, they're going to hit you. You block them, well, they have Afflict. They're going to cause you to lose damage anyway. So it created this sort of sense of no win, which we wanted. We wanted the zombie army to feel really imposing. Because we have no idea what Bolas is going to do with a zombie army. But if you're smart, you know something not good.
And Eternalize, which is an evolution of the Embalm mechanic from Amonkhet. With Eternalize, players can create a token copy of a specific creature in their graveyard, except that the creature also becomes a zombie in addition to its other types, and has power and toughness of 4/4.
And the idea we liked about that was it tied into something the players already knew. It was a way to sort of add a new thing without re-educating everybody. It's like, okay, you know the Embalm mechanic? Just change two things. It's not a white zombie, it's a black zombie, and whatever the stats are, now it's 4/4. And so it allows us to piggyback on a lot of pre-existing knowledge to do something cool to sort of show off the Eternals.
And like with Amonkhet, Hour of Devastation had a punch-out token card to help players keep track of it all. 3 new gods are also added: the Scarab God, the Scorpion God, and the Locust God, increasing the Plains Pantheon to a total of 8. The set, despite its size, also features 13 cycles. Most notable among them are Cycling Deserts at Common, which represent a degraded version of Amonkhet's 5 monuments, and can either tap for mana once in play, or be cycled away from one's hand. Spell Deserts at Uncommon, which can each tap for mana, either colorless or colored, with the latter causing its controller to lose 1 point of life, and also has a triggered ability that involves sacrificing a desert to use. Defeats at Uncommon, which represent each of the Gatewatch members' defeat by Nicol Bolas. The God's Last Actions at Rare, which represent each of Amonkhet's main gods' final actions before succumbing to their fates. And the Hours, a cycle of 5 cards at Rare. They serve to showcase each of the 5 hours that make up the climax of the Hour of Devastation story, complete with mechanics to bring that element of the story into card form. As far as individual cards of note, Hour of Devastation has a handful, and that includes Abrade, a popular and fairly powerful sideboard card, thanks to it not only destroying artifacts, but also possibly creatures via direct damage. Montu's Last Reckoning, which is part of the God's Last Action cycle. While undercosted at just 3 mana, 2 black and a generic, it destroys all creatures in play, though with the drawback of locking down your tapped lands for the next turn. Despite that, it still saw play in Standard, and still sometimes today in Modern and Pioneer. Hollow One, a discard-oriented card that can be brought out essentially for free as early as turn 1 if you've cycled or discarded enough cards in a turn. It pairs well with cards such as Faithless Looting and Bazaar of Baghdad, and, in turn, can be seen in formats such as Modern, Legacy, and Vintage. Hour of Promise, which can often be found in modern land-based strategies, and can be used to abuse cards such as Field of the Dead and Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle. The Locust God, which sees playing Commander, as well as in Pioneer combo decks. Nicol Bolas, God Pharaoh, a powerful 4-ability planeswalker that can make the game essentially unwinnable by your opponents should its final ability be used. Ramunap Excavator, which is part of land combo decks and allows you to play land cards from your graveyard. Ramunap Ruins, part of the Spell Desert cycle. It was a key part in the popular and powerful Red Deck Wins standard deck, and even found itself getting banned from the format in 2018. The Scarab God, which wound up being a rather powerful mid-range card in Standard and has found a home as a popular card to use in Pioneer still today. And Solemnity, an enchantment that makes it so that players can't get counters, nor can artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or lands. It combos very well with cards like 9 Lives and Phyrexian Unlife. In terms of promotional cards, pre-release participants received a foil date-stamped rare or mythic rare. Draft weekend participants were handed a foil promo Ramanop Excavator. Game day participants received a full art Abrade, with top 8 finishers also being given a foil full art Adorned Pouncer. The 6 Buy a Box promo was a foil Wildfire Eternal. And, like with Amonkhet before it, the Masterpiece series returns with more invocations, and they were just as hard to read as they were the first time around. Cards this time include the likes of Armageddon, Avatar of Woe, Doomsday, and the Scorpion God, among others. Now, as for some final thoughts on Hour of Devastation as well as the Amonkhet block as a whole, here again is Magic the Gathering head designer Mark Rosewater.
I think Hour of Devastation was a fun set. I mean, it was a very flavorful set, and like I said, it was... I'm not sure how often we make a set where the point of the set is showing off a character in a grandiose way. This was meant to be Nicol Bolas' set. We wanted to show you sort of why you should be afraid of Nicol Bolas and what he is capable of. And while we didn't tell you the whole plan, we definitely hinted at there are things afoot. He has a zombie army, a pretty powerful zombie army. What's he going to do with that? Something.
So what are your thoughts on Hour of Devastation? Love it or hate it, tell us your story in the comments section. And please remember to click on those like and subscribe buttons. Also, we have a tip jar on Patreon if you are feeling so inclined. Thank you for watching.